He's repeatedly up against insurmountable odds and he just doesn't quit.
And he's in great shape, and let's face it, it's Sly.
Sylvester is, one of the most heterosexual people I've ever met in my life.
For next thing I know, I grab him, we're dancing. He wanted to kill me, I can believe it.
A lot of people say he's difficult, and I can see where it could be.
This guy wrote this script, and then he wouldn't let somebody else star in the movie, and then he won the Oscar.
He likes to play the part of the fool, but he's a pretty bright guy.
He was always a man with a plan.
People judge a book by its cover. I don't have kind of like the lighthearted face.
Sly's very smart and very articulate.
He's like fantastic looking and he's in great shape, and let's face it, it's Sly.
There's always some kind of passionate thing that he has.
And he keeps reinventing himself. He's always got something going on.
Wonderful director, first-rate actor.
Because he's tough with his kids, but he'd kill you for his kids.
He just wants everybody to feel good.
It's like having another brother in your family.
He's a great father.
He's so Italian and so New York.
He has that ability, like John Lennon had, of walking to a room of people and conversing with them no matter what they do.
People come often to see themselves in a film. Or to see an idea of themselves sort of represented. And I think that's one of the things that Sylvester Stallone does so beautifully.
I think we all look at Stallone and say, he's every man, he's me. You know what I mean? Women love him, and this is a guy I want to be in the foxhole with.
Sly Stallone is raw emotion, and you believe it. You believe Rocky, you believe Rambo, and you believe Sly. He's an American folk hero.
I represent a certain ideal, and I'm very tied into a definite philosophy and stature. You know what I mean? It isn't like, you're not going to cast me in Notting Hill 2. It's not happening. I'm not going to be the boy next door. I understand that perception. Come on, move in! That's the way people see you. That's the product, or that's the way they want to ingest you in most of your films. They don't want to see an incredible wide variety.
What jewels?
The jewels he stole from me.
He stole jewels from you too?
Yeah, so he could marry my daughter.
Lisa.
Not Lisa, Teresa.
How come nobody's never met this daughter, Teresa?
Because she's not my daughter, capiche?
Yeah.
You can't go back to the beginning of a lot of other action stars' careers and find incredibly humanist films where they're playing, real human beings.
It really don't matter if this guy opens my head either. All I want to do is go the distance.
He captured not only the warrior in Rambo, but the hero in Rocky. And that's why those two characters are probably so embedded on the public throughout the world, because they capture something very human and also very male.
Sylvester is a movie star, and not very many people become movie stars. A lot of people are touted to become movie stars, but they never actually.
Well, I think that Sly was probably responsible for the majority of the financial benefit of the movie industry for about 10 years. He was the heartbeat of the movie industry. A lot of the great movies we have today are because of his successes.
He really contributed so much to reinventing the action hero, that after that, every action hero was under this tremendous pressure of being chiseled and having the kind of biceps and having this kind of a He-Man body. So he really contributed to that. It was revolutionary when you think about those movies, like the Rocky movies or the Rambo movies, how he looked.
If you're a star like that, you'll always be around.
Such an interesting man. He's so much more than I think people think he is. All the Rocky movies and the tough guy thing, and he's really not like that at all. He's built fantastically and he's gorgeous, but he's very intellectual and he's very artistic and he's surprising. He's a surprise.
The core of Sylvester always stayed the same. I mean, he really is an artist, And I want to tell you, he can write, he can paint, he can direct. He's a poet. And that's who he is.
He paints huge paintings, very bold colors, and he uses a lot of thick paint. I have seen some really great work paintings instead of himself as Rocky, but just abstract paintings also, which are my favorites.
He tries to send this scent, you know, of being like, leave me the hell alone. You know, I don't want to bother with nobody, but it's all crap.
He always gives everybody everything. He gives them his life, his soul, every inch of him he can possibly give. And then when they don't sort of come around, it's very disappointing. And I have to keep reminding him it's a business. These aren't really your friends. You have your friends, and you have to separate the two. And I think he has a hard time doing that.
When there's a falling out between people who you assumed were your friends, and go, it's just, and that to me is not right. It's not just business. And when you're buddies, and business takes a back seat to that.
And he's got a friend or two. I unfortunately was chosen as one of them.
Once you're really friends with him, it's like you've always known him. I can't remember when I met him. I mean, I feel like I've known him for forever.
Sly's loyalty factor is, you know, a 10 out of 10.
We met, I think, at a concert.
Backstage at a show in Los Angeles.
And he was wearing I think a yellow wig. So I thought, well, it looks great to me, you know, I mean, he looked like, you know, Beethoven from space.
He was really famous when I met him. I mean, couldn't be more famous than when I first met him. But I've never found him to be big-headed and, you know, a friend for life.
He's a really generous guy. I've seen him go out of his way to do things to help people, and when he doesn't, you know, he doesn't do it because he wants people to know about it. He just does it because he's a good guy.
It's about loyalty, about friendship, and that's why you sometimes get your heart broken. You wear it on your sleeve, it's going to get slapped, it's going to get bruised, but in the end, you really are you're loyal to yourself, and that's really what counts.
He has a very sensitive side to him. He's a very gentleman, and that's what I see in Rocky. I see a person that is just all heart. And when I met him, I didn't expect to see that after I got to know him, was that side of him, and that surprised me.
We went into a Toys R Us. He got mobbed by, it must have been 5,000 8-year-olds. Hey, what's going on? I mean, he didn't even, usually it's, you know, like guys, hey, Rocky, I love you. Can I have an autograph over here? It's kids. He was like Willy Wonka. I mean, all these people, like, you know, just piled up on him because Spy Kids came out. I said, this is absolutely insane. If he started from here and walked down a freeway across the United States on oncoming traffic, everybody would know who he is. It's pretty scary. So you can't be anonymous. So I think, considering how well known he is, very gracious.
We know we're going to be photographed, so, you know, you dress the part, you look the way they want you to look. You know, you wear the clothes and the things, and you try to look like he's a movie star and I'm his pretty arm companion, but that's not who we are. I mean, that's just for the pictures, and that's great, and everyone gets a good picture out of that. But who we really are is when we're home with our family and friends.
For 20 years, I was very, very ambitious and trying to do everything and completely absorbed in the blur of acquisition and getting things and trying to acquire more power, more this, more notoriety, and whatever. And I don't care what anyone says, that's what it's all about. And that quite often requires abandoning a lot of your private life. And I did that. And now, if I had to do it in retrospect, it's not worth it. But I didn't know that, because, you know, the way I was raised was a different concept.
My mother's side of the family were very educated. You know, they were lawyers, and my father's, you know, was a hardworking immigrant guy from Italy. It was not unlike most 1950s baby boom childhoods, you know, broken home, parents got married multiple times.
Yeah, we hit a lot of potholes on the road of life.
We are, you know, the American tale. I mean, they came over in the bottom of a boat in the 30s.
You know, self-made people that were still trying to figure out the American dream. They came from drastically different backgrounds.
My brother and I went to military schools and things like that. I followed him in military school, which was not good. Because what's that thing, being punished for your father's sins? Definitely got punished for my brother's sins. They said, wait, was your brother Sylvester? I go, yes. Okay, you're gonna have a good 2 years there. I said, oh boy.
I think that kind of upbringing made my brother and I be a little bit more into fantasy, because reality at that time was not always cracked up to be.
He was very thin when we grew up, and he did have a slight paralysis of the mouth. So the mouth kind of was a little crooked. He got picked on, and the name Sylvester did not help.
It was just the emergence of comics. And you had the Flash, you had this, you had the Marvel comics and DC comics, and I was taken by that until I saw Hercules and went, oh, there's a role model. There is something that I want to try to aspire towards. And I was thin. I had no body to speak of whatsoever. You know, it was like I wear a life jacket in the shower. I was thin. I got so carried away with it. I mean, I'd actually get physically hurt trying to duplicate, you know, Superman on TV. I mean, you know, well, if he could jump off a building, I can at least jump off the porch. You know, of course, I'm using a barber's cape and a pair of Speedos.
I mean, he broke every bone in his body. So he took it out into things, started lifting weights, started physical. Let's get to physical. We had weights coming out our ears.
Even though I never reached the heights even close to Steve Reeves, I said, that's it. I'm going to follow that path. I made friends with him, and he did set a goal for me that I'm still trying to arrive at.
My mother used to have a TV show where she lifted weights in the 50s on TV called Barbellas. So we had tons of weights in the basement. And in those days, it wasn't like hire a trainer. You just go over with your friends and look at the magazine. Oh, it looks good. Sit there and lift weights. And he was very determined, disciplined, did that.
He's had it hard. He didn't grow up wealthy. He didn't have like the perfect parents, you know? He didn't have someone mentoring him, telling him where to go to school and what to do. You know, he had to figure it out on his own. And I think when you do that, you get the real answers.
So when we found that he couldn't fly, I think acting started taking over. He was told that he couldn't do things. Oh, your mouth's crooked, you slur, you're too muscular, you don't have the look, I don't know. So when you have people telling you that you can't do things like that, that's what Rocky was about. And all Rocky wanted was a chance. That's all anybody wants. Just give me a chance to fail. We both lived in the same apartment.
It was like hot and cold running roaches. It was rough. It was $71 a month, to give you an idea. And it was right over a subway stop. And I guess 80 years of rumbling, everything was crooked. I was dealing with poverty like a genius. I had it down. If anyone was gonna be broke, I nailed it. I knew how to stay down.
He slept on the bed, I slept on the floor. Next night, I slept on the bed, he slept on the floor. It was one room, didn't have a bathroom. Bathroom was in the hallway. We used to put our food out on the windowsill. That's how we kept it cold. There was no refrigerator. And I remember we used to walk down the street, and God is my witness, and wearing sweatpants. Nobody did that. Nobody wore sweatpants on the street. With sneakers, Converse. They didn't have like Adidas in those days. And we had these t-shirts. I'll never forget them. We used to get them, they're called beefy tees, but they're real tight. And we'd get them like a size smaller, so we'd wear them, we'd look like. So girls, we'd walk down the street of Manhattan, and people would stop and turn around and look at us and go, wow, look at those two guys. And we weren't huge, but we thought we were huge. But for that time, we were big, you know, big arms sitting there, like real long hair. And sometimes we would just do it. We weren't even coming from the gym, making it look like we were coming from the gym. So people, you know, we had no money, so that was how we got attention.
I mean, it was fun. You just walk around, and those are like the really formative years where you sort of build a kind of philosophy.
And this limo pulled up outside, and George Harrison walked out. And of course, my brother, hey, George, how are you? I go, shut up. George, how you doing? Walk back in, you know. But it was just funny that he was that way. And he said, one day, man, I'm gonna run this city.
Well, the career pre-Rocky was pretty rocky. Things were not looking good because I wasn't a certain type. Wasn't born with super looks, a super body, or super anything. Everything had to be acquired through effort.
You know, he was a different guy than actors. You know, he kind of slurred a little bit. He was a little muscular, things like that. And that's not what they were looking for at that point, okay? They wanted more the Robert Redford kind of, you know, sensitive type. You know, he had done Lords of Flatbush, he had done Capone. But what were those movies? Scale plus 10 in those days, which was like 5 cents.
The first 3 or 4 parts I ever got, I was always the villain. I went, but I don't feel that way.
You saw me. Don't tell me you didn't see me. My wallet. Hey, somebody stop him! He took my wallet!
And the way I'd look in the mirror and see myself is not the way the world saw me. I'd look in there and see this, oh, charming, nice guy, you know, an unintimidating person. And then the world would see me as a mugger, you know, as a heavy, as a guy that would end up chasing people. You know, primary impression is what we're taking with originally. Like, oh, God, he looks scary, therefore he is scary forever in our minds, until you can be proven otherwise.
It was coming to the point. He was, you know, coming on 29, 30 years. I got to get something going. So he made it happen for himself.
If I was ever going to be understood, if I was going to ever write anything that kind of like would encompass my philosophies on life, I would have to do it. It's never going to come. It was never going to be in the mail. It was never going to be slid under my door. I was going to have to do it. I cut myself off in the world. I figured that the less distractions, the better. And that's when I sealed up my windows, and I found some black paint.
It's true. He did paint the windows in his apartment black, so he didn't know if it was day or night, and would sit and write for 18 hours at a time at my grandfather's old desk.
He didn't have someone mentoring him, telling him where to go to school and what to do. You know, he had to figure it out on his own. And I think when you do that, you get the real answers.
Are you going to spend all your time on one side, which is like partying and having, you know, everything which should come with youth, or do you want to like dedicate a certain number of hours a day? So this is it. It's like a self-imposed exile. The writing process is some people think it's very empowering, very noble, and I guess when you do succeed in turning a good phrase or accomplishing a scene, you know it. A writer will literally come out of his chair with excitement. I nailed it. But those are far and few between.
If you would have told me my brothers would have been nominated for 10 Academy Awards when we grew up, it's insane, but that's what makes it so amazing.
I was basically auditioning for another part as an actor. And as I was walking out the door, I had this afterthought. I said, by the way, I write a little bit. He went, yeah, sure. Well, if you ever have anything, bring it back. And if I hadn't said that at that moment, he hadn't said, bring it back, I went, oh my God, I really didn't have anything, but now I knew I had to write something quickly.
And in 3 or 4 days, he came back with Rocky.
You know, 90% of it wasn't very good, but the germ was there. That was, you know, the kernel of the idea, germ of the idea. So I walked back in there and he go, great, good story, but who are you? We'll take it, we don't want you. And I understood that, because I wouldn't want me either, you know, believe me. So I went home and I thought about it. Okay, let's just say I sell this thing or someone else does it. I'll make, you know, maybe 150 grand. That'll be gone pretty soon, and then I'm gonna jump off a bridge. It's exactly what the movie's about, not giving up. I went, all right, let me just try to be like the character in the screenplay. And I said, no. And it's amazing to think about what the word no does. It boggles some people's minds. How dare you say no?
And he stuck to his guns, much to his credit.
Wish me luck, I'm gonna need it.
Only through the exuberance of youth, in the ignorance, in the blissful ignorance of youth, that I continued to say no, and then I got the part on a very tenuous basis. Like, if I did one thing wrong, you're out. You know, and I had a feeling that was going to be, they were going to shoot the first week and then fire me and then reshoot it, which I believe was going to happen. And of course, everyone denies that, but I believe it's going to happen. There was in the air. But luckily, John Avildsen and the production people started shooting the dramatic scenes in the beginning. The first scene we shot was me chasing I was a loan shark and chasing my first customer down along the waterfront and pinning them against the wall. I go, you owe me money. If you're gonna dance, you gotta pay the band.
Hey, don't hit the face. No, not the face.
Mr. Gazzo wants the 200 now. Yeah?
I'm broke. Honestly, I'm broke.
Mr. Gazzo says I should get the 200 or break your thumb. You understand?
Please.
Huh?
Please.
What's your name again? Huh?
Bob.
Bob. Listen, Bob. Listen, Bob. You want to dance, you got to pay the band. You understand? You want to borrow, you got to pay the man. Hey, I ain't emotionally involved, Bob. You understand? Give me some money. Give me some money.
He went, this is, there's something, maybe there's something going on here, you know? And thank God we shot that scene early on.
Gene had a lot of trouble getting me to read the script because I had no interest in boxing. I thought it was a stupid sport. And he said, no, please, please read it. So I said, all right. Well, the second or third page on this script, this guy's talking to his turtles, Cuff and Link.
You should have seen me. You guys hungry? No?
And I was charmed. I found it a terrific character study and a love story, and the boxing was the background.
It was a subject that was pretty distasteful and pretty dark by cinematic standards. There was nothing romantic or comedic about it. It's a fighter, a broken down fighter at that, who really has nothing going for him.
I realized the only way we were going to get Rocky to look good as far as the boxing was concerned, we had a lot of rehearsal time. So I was able to convince the producers to give us 2 weeks to rehearse and to put the boxing sequence at the end of the schedule. So there would be the longest amount of time possible for these guys to get the boxing down. So they said, okay. So the first day that Sylvester and Carl Weathers got into the ring, they started bouncing around and saying, I'll do this and I'll do that. And I said, fellas, this is never going to work. Sylvester, why don't you go home and write this thing out? And he liked the idea. He came back the next day with 32 pages of lefts and rights, and that's what we learned. And I had my 8mm camera, and I would shoot the rehearsals and have them look at it so they would see how unterrific they were. And they eventually got terrific. As a result of that rehearsing and practicing, going over it and over it, we broke each round down into quarters, and by the time it got filmed, they were terrific.
He really wants it. Hollow left of the head. Stay. All right, now the champion's coming back. He's coming off the floor now, and he's trying to put him with the heart. Another right. Combinations into the face. That's the Apollo we know.
So when people say it's a boxing film, I say, no. It's a love. It's about Adrian and this guy who's trying to date her, who happens to be a fighter. I can't hold this whole thing on my back. I am so out of my league here. I'm in big trouble.
And so he steps out of the trailer first. I think we're sharing to meet him in the wardrobe. And this is the first day of shooting, and he sighed. He went, like, after all the baloney, now he had to do it. It was the greatest sigh. He remembers it to this day, because we talked about it. It was a sigh of, ooh. Now it comes down to the real thing, not the business, the real thing. Great woman.
Okay, let's do it.
I knew it was a hit when I read the script.
He has this great ear for language.
Street prose.
A lot of people don't realize he wrote so much of that stuff.
Beautiful on the page. Absolutely on the page.
Sylvester Stallone wrote a story about a man's dignity through the eyes of Adrian, his wife.
Adrian was his woman. Rocky was her man. They were always faithful.
Without her in the movie, there is no music. There is nothing.
She did that kiss with Sylvester when they slid down the doorway, the hall, in the first one. It was just, it was magic.
A really pure first kiss that I think everybody felt was the kiss of souls.
We were sharing a broken down trailer.
It was an indie movie when you think about it. You could make a porno movie for what that cost.
We didn't have a lot of money, and we sought a great deal of inspiration from Burgess Meredith. And he brought the spirit of the thespian.
You want to know? I want to know!
that you had the talent to become a good fighter.
It was so different than what was going on then, you know? And it was a low-budget movie. I mean, the dog, Butkus. I remember I used to clean up after this dog in the apartment. Now the dog's in the movie, you know? Dog's in the movie more than I am, you know? So I'm sitting there going like this. I said, it's like a family thing.
The gods were smiling on us. The money wasn't smiling on us, but the gods were smiling on us.
Sylvester had written the scene where he runs up the steps. I had no idea how we were going to shoot that because we didn't have cranes and the equipment or helicopters.
Garrett Graham was taking out his Steadicam for the first time. So this, I mean, can you imagine being in the freezing streets of Philadelphia with Burgess Meredith and Burgess Meredith dressing over here and the Steadicam being tested over here? Wow.
All those traveling shots, the running shots, we didn't lay a track. And that was a first.
Sylvester was having breakfast, I believe, with Mike Westmore. And accidentally, he left some of his wounds, these prosthetic wounds, on the table. And they were taken away. Room service took them away. Now, we didn't have any money. Can you imagine? With the wounds meant everything. That meant round 4 wouldn't work, round 6 wouldn't work. And we all started laughing. You know, what are you gonna do? And he found them. They went through the trash, and they found these wounds that they could put on Sylvester to make this particular movie work.
Just before the big fight at the end, Rocky was in the original script. He was going to go to Mickey's gym and look at newsreel footage of Apollo and his previous fights. Well, we never had the time or the money to shoot this stuff. Why don't we have him go to the arena when it's empty? We prevailed upon the producers to pay for these big posters at either end of the arena of these guys in their fighting poses. The posters arrived just before we were going to shoot the scene. Well, as luck would have it, the Polaroid picture that had been given to the artist of Rocky in his boxing pose, Rocky had red trunks on. So we didn't have the time or the money to redo the posters. So, oh my goodness, what are we going to do?
Rocky, what brings you here tonight?
Mr. Jergens, the poster's wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm wearing white pants with a red stripe.
It doesn't really matter, does it? I'm sure you're going to give us a great show. Try to get some rest, kid. Good night.
Now we feel even more sympathy for this guy because nobody cares what his trunks are.
But Sylvester had this sense of what it was, what it would become, and he inspired all of us.
That afternoon premiere, I mean, tons of people were walking out in droves, and I couldn't understand it. He was just sitting there looking, because, you know, almost like mortified, tears in his eye, and sitting there, and then the night of the premiere, it was the biggest movie in the world.
Everybody remembers seeing Rocky.
When I first saw Rocky, I thought it was one of the greatest things I'd ever seen.
I can kind of remember where I was sitting. I was sort of sitting, the theater was packed. It was absolutely packed, and everybody had come to this movie, and I was sort of sitting in the middle section in the back on the left. I can still see where I was sitting because I remember at the end of the movie, literally people were standing up and cheering, and I'd never seen anything like that in the movie theater before.
Honest to God, I was walking down New York City, okay, down some, and I'm going down, and there were a bunch of workmen, you know, they seemed to be on a million platforms and everywhere, and all of a sudden I heard, "Yo, Adrian! Yo!" And oh my God, it was coming from everywhere in New York City.
I mean, I thought Rocky would be maybe successful underbilling in the drive-in for the summer of '76. I had no idea it was going to go on like this.
Rocky, I'm in the movie. I still can't turn it off. I'll be sitting there flipping around, and they'll go like, "Yeah, I don't know if I just sit there watching.
That amazing shift of going from being a private person to a very public person was rather stunning.
And I said, well, you know, enjoy this. And he said, what? I said, being able to walk down the street without people clamoring and wanting your autograph, you know, to be anonymous. It's nice. And I remember him saying, no, don't worry, I'm ready.
The impact that it had wherever he went, it really was like the Beatles coming to town.
Rocky is now an Academy Award winner.
First time he was nominated, the film won. I mean, he was there, you know, with his shirt off.
Like Rocky was $1 million to 1 shot. I think this movie was $1 million to 1 shot. I don't think it'll become trendy, but I do think a lot of neophyte actors, writers, and directors will get a shot.
It's extraordinary how that character has translated.
That's pretty heavy. Rocky and Baghdad. I mean, come on. It just shows the impact. Rocky did great. Then he did 2 movies, which I liked, Fist and Paradise Alley.
You got a lot of style for a guy with pigeon stuff on your shoulder, Cosmo.
I was taking a lot on my shoulders, which maybe I shouldn't have, but I really loved the story, but it was like incomprehensible to most people, so I was sort of stuck with it. And I thought, you know, after writing Rocky and being in Rocky, I said, well, you know, maybe we should try one more thing, try to just direct it. And I found that I enjoyed the process a lot.
Now you're in his tight close-up. Right, now, doesn't have to go that fast. She goes,
Quiet,
she starts to walk out, and whack! His close-up swivels from here to there. Nifty, huh?
I'm back. A little out of hand when they said, sing the song. And I said, yeah, come on, I don't want to sing the song, can't sing it all. I mean, as you know from Rhinestone. But I thought, let me be really out of the box. How about the character who's not a very good singer, actually sings, but it's heartfelt, and it's like, that's who he is, and it's like, let's just make it all a total tour de force. I guess now looking back on it, it was definitely biting off a little bit more than I could chew. But the process was fantastic. I really enjoyed every second of it.
Didn't do well. The guy's over.
So if you're listening, Sylvester Stallone, take that and that.
So you lose these little battles. But man, when you face that big war, you take that one.
Rocky 2 comes out, movie of the year. Uh-oh. Things aren't going good. Does a few movies here. Yeah, he's finished. Rocky 3, bigger than Rocky 2, and one put together. They go, oh, gee. Now these guys don't know if they're coming or going.
He wants to prove to the whole world that it was nothing but some kind of a freak the first time out.
I never asked you to stop being a woman, you know. Please, don't ask me to stop being a man.
The doctor said you shouldn't fight anymore.
You recommended I don't fight, and I recommend that I do.
I never saw Rocky as a one-off, and I received criticism like, "Oh, you're just pandering, or you're continuing to live off the first one. Each one gets worse." I said, "No. Each one is a segment of a life that's in progress."
I'll bust you out.
Go for it.
The worst thing happened to you that could end any fight. You got civilized. Get out of here with you!
If you look at Rocky 3, no actor's ever been that cut, that shredded.
The character becoming very egotistical at that time, very egotistical, and very aware of his body, and because now he's been a champion for a while. So I thought, okay, let me change my entire approach to eating and exercise to show the transition from 2 to 3. And I went on the most extreme high-protein diet I had ever heard of. I had never heard of Atkins. I don't think Atkins was out at that time. So it was just me experimenting with basically anything that had a face on it, I ate it, right? If it was chicken or beef, but primarily I got into fish. And it was fish, water, and a green vegetable until I had a body fat. It went down from 18 to 2.4. At that time, Mr. Olympia was 4.5 to 5 body fat. So I realized that's too far down. And even though you get to a point where you say, oh, I'm shredded to the point where you have veins in your hair, but the effect is long-reaching. When you realize you can't remember your telephone number, you know, which car did I drive today? Oh, I took the bus. You know, you're getting a little out there. That's when you have to pull back and realize that it's all about balance.
Sly became such a bigger-than-life hero and character that he and I would talk about this a lot. And I think once you've created that kind of an image, it's very difficult to change that image. I know it's frustrating for Sly because he's very serious about his art, and very serious about his writing, and very serious as a director.
Sly had just finished Rocky III and was getting quite a bit of success out of the third sequel. A couple of people's idea that it would be good matching to put Sly and I together.
And I enjoyed actually all the things I directed, you know, especially working with John Travolta.
A Sylvester Stallone film, Staying Alive.
So respectful of not wanting me to do something that I didn't imagine would happen, because, you know, it'd be like my going in and telling him what Rocky should do next. You know, I had my own ideas, good or bad. They were at least my visions.
So when I saw John, I see him in a certain kind of light. So you build it around that character, and he was very, very obliging to that. So there'd be moments in there where, you know, you can put him in a complete silhouette because his presence is so strong. You don't have to see him all the time. He's there. I mean, if his hands, he's talking off screen, you see his hands, you know, you feel his presence. You don't have to always be there. And that's star quality.
Very much wants you to look well on screen. He's very, he crafts his lighting and his sets with a very responsible eye. You know, he doesn't let anything go off.
When I met John, I just thought, here's his talent.
I was afraid to actually work with Sly and getting shit because he was far stricter than I felt I could do, so I was a little trepidatious.
Man, if I could just take him, we just do a little changing, literally transform him through his own eyes. I don't think there's ever been, including myself, such a turnaround physically. You know, I've always been pretty physical my whole life, so to me it's just about just turning up the heat. But to do it from zero, to do it from scratch, it is really incredibly difficult. It really is. I had no idea how determined he can be.
Oh, you think that because you're on a show and I'm not, that's competition,
Yeah.
right? It ain't competition.
Well, what is it?
Envy.
You want to dance here, you follow my rules. Because I'm going to push you until you think you're going to die.
Guys like you aren't relationships. We're exercise.
I believe Rambo started out on the right foot because of the way he was introduced. If Rambo was introduced like he was in Rambo 2 or Rambo 3, I don't think it would have been as ingrained or as accepted by the public.
The Rambo character was a script that was based on a book, and different than Rocky, where he created Rocky. He was basically hired to do Rambo. He certainly created who that character was and is, and brought that character to life in a way probably no one else saw it and no one else could have done.
The first one is he was an everyday sort of guy, at least that's what he was on the surface, looking to get something to eat, in a hamburger. Big cops just get lost. Excuse me, why are you pushing me? What'd you say?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me.
And it's like, everyone can relate to that. Everyone who feels like they've been maligned or just taken for granted or shoved around, then when he explodes, you go, oh, it's justified.
Don't push it. Don't push it, I'll give you a war you won't believe.
A lot of people don't realize that Rambo's always running. He's always trying to flee. He's not attacking until finally there is no recourse, and then he turns around. So I think there's an identifiability and a justification. Say, okay, what he does under the situation is acceptable, as opposed to someone who just comes out.
Sly's real fight and contribution, and he won that fight, was not letting that character die. It changed the whole perception of who and what Rambo is and was. He went from being a sort of bad guy and victim to a cult hero. And I think that's really Sly's enormous contribution to it, because against everybody's wishes, he really insisted that the character live.
It was a good move for Sly because it didn't look like it was trying to be anything spectacular. No one went in expecting a lot, and then it surprised the heck out of everyone because it was a very dominant film because of its lack of promise to be anything than what it was. And when it lived up to a certain reality, man, it took off like wildfire.
I was surprised at how well it did, because it's a new kind of film. Like, kind of we hadn't seen an American turning on America like that. It was just very unusual. There was a polarization in the country, and there was a lot of disgruntled veterans, a lot of people angry, a lot of wounds still open, and so Rambo became kind of a flashpoint, and the liberals were going, look what he represents. He belongs to the right wing. He's a saber rattler. He's jingoistic. He's the guy. No, man, I'm just trying to make a living. I'm interpreting this. I'm neutral. But it got worse and worse and worse until eventually, the president said,
I'm reminded of a recent, very popular movie. And in the spirit of Rambo, let me tell you, we're gonna win this time.
Okay, die is cast. And it became a little tense.
Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing. A good supply of body bags.
I just want to say clearly right now, Rambo didn't even fight for America. He never attacked anyone. His whole thing was setting people free, and then he disappears. So who knows? Rambo may ride again. I never see myself as the best in anything, which is good because it makes me and fight to achieve. When you try to acquire things, there are many more experiences of failure than there are success.
And every big actor will have a dry spell.
His career has changed a lot. I mean, he's done different challenging things. He's done comedy, he's done black humor, and he's done very serious acting.
When you've done Rocky and Rambo, you become so much a bigger-than-life character that it's very difficult to take a little bit of a step back.
But you can lose those little ones. It's all right, because each time you lose, you become wiser and wiser and wiser.
So, I mean, he's had a lot of comebacks. Then he did Rhinestone, not a great hit.
The movie was a bomb. They were trying to have Stallone do something besides the Rocky character. He was drawn to it, and I was drawn to it because we thought that it would work. That city boy, country girl, those kinds of movies, have worked before.
This is closer to me than anything I've ever done, because I'm really not a boxer, and I really don't run around with an M60 machine gun through the woods of Canada,
He is funny. He wasn't funny in the movie so much because it wasn't particularly a great movie, and none of it really worked well.
No, that's on the level of Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
It's about having humility. It's about thinking you're not going to win and yet still having the courage to try. I admire people who live their life like that.
And to be honest with you, a lot of people talk about how bad Stallone sings. Why do you want to fight?
Because I can't sing or dance.
Stallone can sing. Now, he can't sing country, and he couldn't sing my songs. He didn't do himself no favors, and I didn't do him any either, helping him with it. But when we were on the set, he loved all those rock songs and all those pop songs from the 50s and the 60s and all those great songs, Bobby Darin songs, that kind of stuff. And he would sing all the time, and he could really sing good.
How you doing? Nice night. Need a lift?
I had, for like 18 months, 2 years before that, had gone through the worst time of my life. I had a lot of health problems. I just about had a breakdown. I was overweight, and I was not in a good place. The worst place I'd ever been in my life at that time. Just kind of being around him really brought me kind of back to health. And it was very energizing.
He really does believe nothing's impossible, so he sometimes sees himself as an actor playing that it would be very difficult for an audience to see him play.
One day, the great comedy will become long.
I fall into a specialty category. It just is. It's like A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y.
It was great fun for me because he was fun to work with.
I know some people think he's this dour guy, but he's extremely funny. I just don't think it's been caught on film 100%.
It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Sylvester Stallone! Yay!
He's a knucklehead. First of all, he's so smart, and he's so witty, and he always has the most horribly succinct things to say about people that it just kills you.
Link, don't cry, don't feel bad. You still smell nice.
He always says that great phrase, if you've got nothing good to say about anybody, sit next to me.
Takes like a bad situation and makes it funny. I mean, like, he'll think about times when he was growing up with his family and all these problems were going on, and then he'll just turn it around and make it hilarious. You know, he'll change a really bad situation and just make fun of it. So then everybody sort of lightens up and starts laughing.
He's really funny, but sometimes he doesn't know he's funny, you know?
His one-liners are so awesome that it's just fun. It's fun to work with him.
He makes everybody laugh. He walks in a room, and if you get to know him, if you're in an intimate setting, he just will have you in tears. I mean, some of my friends, they say their funniest moments in their life have been with Sylvester and his storytelling.
Sly is very playful, and he directs me to walk in one direction, and I misunderstood it for some reason, and I went in the other direction. And when I went into the opposite direction, on the megaphone, he said, "You are the dumbest actor that ever existed." And with that, I started to laugh so deeply.
Press was writing about it, that how we hate each other and all this, of course, which was not true.
One day we were in Cannes, and you know, we're on, I guess he was there to promote a film, and there's a lot of press around, and I'm going, why don't we do something different? And I'm going, let's take a photo. He goes, I don't know, we've taken enough photos, this and that. And I said, let's just do something different. Next thing I know, I grabbed.
It's very funny because, you know, Sly was upset because he says, you're leading.
I'm not exactly a very good dancer. I'm sure he's had better partners before.
So we had a great laughs, and some great pictures came out of that.
Who knows, I may have been the first guy to dance with a future president of the same sex.
When I worked with him, I really realized how funny he is. He's very, very witty. He would just throw out lines like that for just different actors, you know, just ad-lib lines, and it's hard to think like that.
A great number of fans have asked me to ask you, if I met you, how you pronounce your last name. They say Stallone, Stallone, and Stallion. Which one do you prefer?
Schwartz.
Movies like Oscar, I know they didn't work, but that's really who he is. He's like goofy and silly.
People come up and they say, so what's Stallone like? I go, great. And they're so disappointed. Wonderful, isn't he?
Oh, yes, wonderful. What a guy. Wow. Oh, great guy.
No, that's why I said he's working really hard. It's a real challenge for him.
When I was doing Oscar, I thought, maybe if I can catch a little lightning in the bottle.
It's chaotic, it's frenzied. It doesn't rely upon stunts. It's interaction, it's comedy, it's beats, it's looks, it's moments, and it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Hold me back. Go on. Hold me back.
He's much shorter than most of the big stars.
My whole career has been risks.
Wait, let me do a little Michael Jackson. Get the feet. That's the feet. Wait a second.
I also think it's a pleasure. He doesn't have to take off his shirt or get blown up or beaten. He's not in the desert, you know. I mean, there's all talk in this movie. A gun's not even fired.
Okay.
I think he has more dialogue in this picture than in his career.
You mug stop calling me boss. It ain't respectable. Sorry, boss. What do you think this is, a comedy?
The films that don't do well are the ones I have the most fun on. The ones that just sheer torture work. Go figure.
And at the end of Rocky V, he dies.
So I've always thought that it would be great to be able to follow someone right to the end. Right to the very end, as I'm croaking, he's croaking, like right to the end. Thank you, done.
With his head in Adrian's lap, Rocky expires.
Because of the violent blows to the head, the effects are irreversible.
So we started to shoot the picture in chronology, and the head of the studio calls up and he said, oh, by the way, Rocky doesn't die. So Rocky doesn't die. But the movie died because it had no point without him dying, and if he had died, people would go to see that. And that's why nobody went to see Rocky V.
It's a very interesting business. Sly had a dry spell until Cliffhanger, you know? And every big actor will have a dry spell. Tom Hanks will have a dry spell. They all will. But I mean, now they're so freaked out on Sly because they always say, oh, he's over, and all of a sudden he comes out in another movie, they go, oh, geez, maybe I should have been nicer to him last week at lunch, you know?
I didn't come into the movie industry to be a stuntman, and I got sort of caught up in action films. It was like the beginning of a new uber action genre. And I believe that where the dialogue was obviously pretty shallow and not that necessary, you had to learn to speak with your body. I went, okay, well, how do you do that? Well, stunts.
Sylvester Stallone does his own stunts, and he wanted to do the climbing, he wanted to hang off the mountain's edge, he wanted to do it without the safety ropes to make it as dangerous and realistic looking as possible.
And I thought if I could do as many of these stunts as possible, that would be the same as kind of like dialogue would be to, you know, a great talking heads film. So the more I got involved with it, the more I realized that, you know, I got a little, I like this challenge. And even though a lot of it was, the next day, you know, this is broken and that is broken, I started to be appreciated by a certain genre of guys, of stuntmen, which are real tough individuals. And they don't give any kind of like thumbs up to most people. So it was like being accepted by a different group. There was a shot in Specialist where the explosion, it shook me up. And you can see her go.
He makes you unafraid. He knows exactly what he's doing. And that if he tells you to do it, that you're safe and you're okay, and he knows what you're doing. And so suddenly you think you're Rocky and Rambo, and you're like, yeah, I can do that. And when we're running through this building and there's all these explosions, you know, I've done a lot of action movies, but let me not kid you. When you're running through explosions, you're running through explosions. And we push the perspective for the camera, but you're still running through explosions. Well, when you're running through explosions with Sly, he likes to really run through explosions. He doesn't like to push the perspective that much. He actually really likes to get into it.
What you all couldn't feel is that the explosion, the concussion was so overwhelming, the heat and the blast, which would be maybe 20 feet away or less, would hit her. She's not used to it, man, but she hung in there. But those tremors, if you ever get the chance to show that on film, that's full on for real. I mean, she was terrified, but she never backed up.
And so when you're with him, you just go, no, all right, you know, it's him. He hasn't killed himself yet, so what the hell? And you find yourself so much more daring than ever before and having this great adventure, and it's exhilarating and it's hot and it is sexy. Yeah, I just did that. Okay, pretty cool. And you know, in your little memory book of life, you just ran through a bunch of fireball explosions with Sly, and okay, that's kind of hot.
You think the killing is gonna make everything all right?
Something has to.
And the fact that he knew who I was and wanted me for the part and was interested in working with me and was so kind of excited about the whole thing was wonderful for me. I mean, he was really, and he was really incredible and really took me under his wing. Well, you know, he's very serious about his work, you know. He wanted to rehearse things. There was one scene in particular that we kind of were working on for a while, and we had rewrites and stuff, and he wanted it to be right. He really did. He works very hard. He doesn't goof around, you know, but he also, I think, has a sense of humor about what he does, and he enjoys it. You know, they do this thing where you go, it's called Show West, where people kind of go and talk about their movies to the theater owners, and Warner Brothers wanted Sly to go, but they didn't care whether I went or not. You know, I mean, I was just the girl in the movie, and he insisted that I come along. He said, you know, I'm not going to do this unless she comes too.
Get up here, my little shy one. Julianne Moore is going to carry a lot of weight in this film. So, scary, isn't it?
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
scary.
How do you like working with Annette?
And he sat with me the whole time, and we kind of did all the press together, and he said, this is what you do, this is where you stand, you have to talk to these people, and then they can take a picture, and then, you know, because I want to let you know what's going on, just so you know, so you feel comfortable. And he did that with me all the way through all of it, through the whole picture, the press, everything.
He's really terrific with his son. He's always supported his kids, and I saw him pushing him, you know, to get into directing and acting and all this. Used him in some of his movies. And he has been really terrific, and he's very proud of him. He's in the family, but we don't know that because he's always acting like this macho guy.
Hey, wait, what's this? What's this? Goodness gracious, where'd this come from? It's a strange place to stash your lunch.
I love it when you know, families are tight.
They were close, they were wonderful. The boy's not a brat.
They gave each other a lot of respect, and they're working together. It looked like they were very comfortable with it. It was delightful.
I don't think he's looking for so much the size of the role as the importance of the role.
Why would he want to play this character? He plays, you know, these men of intense decisiveness and action and physical strength.
This is exactly what I've been looking for.
But I think people still saw Sylvester Stallone in it, even though he had a pot belly.
It's a very unusual role for Sly because it's a man who's suddenly torn between such conflicting pressures that in some ways he's frozen for some of the picture, trying to puzzle out a way to please all these different masters.
Hey, Freddie! Hey, Fred!
Jurisdiction ends at the George Washington Bridge.
Freeze! Police!
But half the men I watch live beyond that bridge, where no one's watching. I'm watching.
Hands on the car!
It's like you're the sheriff of Copland.
And when he got reviews that were equivalent to Robert De Niro's, that made me so happy because the world saw what a great actor Sly is.
Sly had his hands full, in a sense, because what he was doing was such a difference from what he had been doing in the last few years. He had his hands full in the sense he's playing a different kind of man than he's played in a while. And that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of challenge. And what he was like was just someone continually thinking about the material, continually trying to kind of undermine what the obvious Stallone choice might be.
Here's Sylvester Stallone, the most perfect-looking guy in our movie universe, healthy, incredible, the guy you'd most want to have, you know what I mean, in a tough situation in the jungle. He's strong, smart, and everything else. And I have to offer him a part where I say, gain 40 pounds, move like a slow mule, you know what I mean, and you have to be, you know, slow, and slower. I mean, he put it on, and he took it off fast enough.
Many actors have done things like that, but for someone like Sly, it was an extraordinary accomplishment.
You know, some people have hobbies, like they go out and they play golf, but for many, many years, my hobby was like experimenting with food. So I thought, well, let me put my journeys, my trials, my tribulations, what I've done for films, not films. I gained 45 pounds for film, 40 pounds for film, how to lose it back and forth. So there'll be a book coming out called On the Sly, and I don't know where they came up on the Sly. In the book, I'll reference certain films that required different training, like for Cliffhanger, as opposed to Rambo, and then Rocky, and then Copland, which is at the other end of the spectrum.
Now, the people that really honestly are interested and care about their well-being will look at him and hopefully get some great advice, take something away from it.
He kind of is his own walking advertisement. He's 58 years old. You know, he's in better shape than guys 25 years old.
All my life I've been fascinated with what can be done to the body. So I got into this company called Stallone & Stone, and it's what I've been experimenting with for 25 years. So I've taken all my experiments, put them into a form that I think is easy to follow, ready to use, and I guess I'm the guinea pig. So it works.
I think the kids and the wife is the thing. That's him, I think, paramount at this point. Before he go off 7 months, do a movie, he wouldn't do it now.
He really, truly married the right girl, because that's the girl who is his heart.
Sylvester's finally found, you know, the woman of his dreams, and I think she's a fantastic girl. Always have done. Easy to get on with, no side to Jen. There was no agenda with Jennifer, and she just loved him. And the fact they got 3 daughters now, and he's, you know, I would never believe that Sly would have settled down and become a happy family man, but he has, and I'm delighted for him.
They really love each other, and Tough Guy is so afraid of her. You hear me, you wuss?
He surprised me. He had gone to a store and he took one room and he put all of his dresses that he thought were so beautiful that looked nice on me. He put them all out, and I walk into this room and music's playing and all these dresses, and I'm looking at my sister going, what's going on? And all of a sudden he walks in and he goes, pick out a dress, we're gonna get married. So I go, when?
I haven't been very lucky in marriage. So I thought, I don't know. I don't know if I want to put this on you. You're such a sweet girl. She says, well, I'd like to get married. So I said, just keep carrying your dress around. I have a feeling it's going to happen.
It was special because I had the people that I wanted to be there, and that was Sylvester. That's all that mattered at the moment to me.
I love those moments, even when they're incredibly frustrating. The noise, the music, the cacophony of their craziness just fills my life. It drives me crazy sometimes, but just take it away and it's really life becomes quite redundant.
You know, I think of them as my kids, but I'm not used to girls, you know. I said, why do they cry? It's like, that's what they do. They cry. I said, but at everything? He goes, yeah, they do. I said, wow.
He's with us all the time. I mean, Frank's over on Sundays, eating dinner with us. He takes vacations with us.
That's why I'm not married, because, you know, after a few hours, I'm done. I'm ready to go home. Uncle Frank, are you staying? Nah, Uncle Frank's got work to do, kids. It's great. I love you.
He's a great father. He's the one that my girls go to in the middle of the night because if they have to either go to the bathroom or they're scared or they need something. Every single night, at least one or two of them is in our room coming to get him, because he'll take them back to bed. He'll lay down with them until they fall asleep. And there's not a moment that he doesn't want to spend with his kids.
My wife's unbelievable. She runs a business. She works extraordinarily hard.
There's not a lot of help around the house. She cooks the meals. She takes the kids to school. She goes, I raise my kids. I don't need they're my kids. I had them so I could raise them.
We have the same hopes and dreams for our children as everybody else does in our lives. We're very normal, very real.
That's a lie. There's nothing normal about this family until you go to see other people's families. You go, you know what, we're not as bad as we thought.
I mean, he'd rather be home reading a book or writing a story or spending time with us, you know, or on a golf course than he would be being the movie star.
He's like in panic mode 24/7 because he knows there's going to come a time when they will date.
And now you've got 3 daughters. It's going to be really expensive now, the weddings. And I said, I hope they all get married at once, so you have a huge bill.
I don't even want to be around when these girls start dating.
He worries about it quite a bit.
Because I think if it was him, I think he'd rather have them single for the rest of their life.
I think he knows what he was like as a young man, so I think that's it's like he's thinking karma's going to get him back.
I got engaged 42 times today. This is a hell of a night.
A guy like that better never come near my house.
We're such hands-on parents. Hopefully it won't be an issue.
If you're like me, like a schlepper, when I was coming around playing guitar, hey, can I play a tune?
It is a problem, and I have a feeling I'm going to be dropping a ladder down as soon as he falls asleep so they can get out of their bedroom and quick.
The children to me are my greatest joy and my most solvent pain, really. Because they can take me the highest and they can take me the lowest. And I guess that's just a definition of love, too. I have a child, Sergio, who was diagnosed with autism at a time when no one knew what it was. And autism is incredibly tragic that because on Monday your kid is fine, on Tuesday, gone. Yet he looks perfect, he sounds perfect, whatever, but gone. And he's gone into a dark, dark world and rarely they ever come out of it. So you begin to question, you know, God's motives. Start to question science, what it is, and then you start to question yourself. Can you feel the same love that you felt before? Same responsibility, or then again, whose fault is it? You know, it really, you go through a lot of soul searching. So it takes a lot of work to work that out, and you come to terms. And then another tragedy strikes, and you have a daughter, perfect, beautiful, mother's incredible, born with a hole in her heart.
When Sophia was 2.5 months, she was diagnosed with having a hole in her heart. She had a VSD, And, you know, for Cy and I, it was, you know, you couldn't, you know, when you're new parents and you have this new little baby, precious little girl, and for the doctors tell you she's going to need open heart surgery at 2.5 months old, and she was very, very thin and very weak, I'm thinking she's never going to survive this.
You realize you are powerless. You know, you're movie, you're just supposed, you know, guy that has it all, and you do, and then you have nothing. So now you really start to realize that we are not an island, that we are so dependent, so fragile, and so co-reliant on other people.
I knew she was going to make it. There's, you know, when they said to us, and Cy and I both started crying after, they said, say goodbye to your little girl, and we're like, what? Say goodbye? She's coming back in a few hours, you know. That was hard. That was hard, but, yeah. But she's great. She's beautiful, and she's healthy, and she's a very special girl.
What I really understood there was the strength of female over male in that kind of situation. That was really, I mean, yeah, I got physical strength, but my wife showed an amazing emotional strength, which is 10 times stronger than physical strength. Physical strength, anybody can get that. You know, just vitamins, working out, whatever. Emotional strength, that's deep.
It definitely brought us closer. I think, you know, that moment of just being there in the hospital room, we didn't leave. We were there 24 hours a day until she left. I didn't see daylight until I took her home.
He's a good golfer. Right now, my golf game is so bad that I can't criticize anybody else's.
I keep trying to get him not to swing so hard. I tell him he's so strong he should swing easy.
He hits the ball 1.5 miles, sometimes left and sometimes, but 1.5 miles.
He likes taking these divots, and golfers come out of the holes of these divots that he takes.
He only gets in trouble when he tries to kill the ball, and he forgets that it's not a boxing match, it's golf. It's more like ballet than boxing.
So we're playing, and he kind of hooked one into the trees. So we're looking for the ball, and I go, Sly, is this your ball over here? And he goes, does it say practice on it? And I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, that's mine. He plays with practice balls.
Okay, yes, I do borrow practice balls off the range, which I figure, what the hell? Can I practice at home? You know, that's the way I look at it. Of course, people look at it as theft. It's all right, I understand that. It's just a philosophical difference.
Made up his mind to play golf. Became a really good golfer.
Once or twice I beat him. He's probably better than I am.
Playing with the president was amazing. I mean, I said, this is a guy that runs the world. And I was so irritating to him because I was practicing my swing all the time, and there's photos of him swinging and then me next to him, like, and he'd be looking around and go, I'm surprised I wasn't audited. Like, can you stop swinging when I am swinging? But so he was great. I like the philosophy behind golf. If I hit a ball, I don't want it coming back at me. That's it. It just keeps going and going and going. And I like what that represents. This little gesture of hitting the ball. It seems so simple. Not.
Well, I'm taking this to the next level.
It took my stature to a whole different level. Forget Rocky, forget Rambo. When you're the toy maker, you now have real street cred in my house.
As a testament to Sly, Spy Kids 3D is the biggest international Spy Kids. Normally, number 3 is the least, one, but this was the biggest Spy Kids of all. Bigger than number 1, bigger than number 2. And I think a large part of that is Stallone really played it broad and wild for kids. He was fabulous.
In that character, you're finally allowed to just step out and say, all right, let all this madness come to fruition. Let it all bubble to the top. And then you really see the actor's true personality, that there are all these nonsensical, wonderful craziness and dark characters that just boil to the top. And not a chance very often, because then you can cut loose. That's where you can really start to chew the scenery and leave holes in the wall. I mean, you can just be the biggest ham in the world. The kind of boxing I know is a very noble sport. It's been getting a bad rap because quite often the way it's presented now, it's one-dimensional. They've come from across America, each with a different story. some inspired.
My father's a doctor with the United States Navy, and he's in Afghanistan right now.
Some tragic.
Even though she was ill, you don't stand and hold a 2-day-old thinking it's gonna die.
But they all have one thing in common, the desire to be a champion. Two highways were crossing in my life. One being that I'm identified with a fantasy character, Rocky, no matter what, forever. I fall off a cliff, Rocky fall off a cliff, you know what I mean? But no matter what, it's inextricable. And then there was an opportunity to really meet boxers who were at that kind of crossroad in their life, who were underdogs, who were trying to achieve something. If I could overlap the two, that would be very, very unique. That's something that would be a first in my life. Something, and when you get to my age, finding firsts is a very rare situation.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's a whole world. And they have these 16 guys who, well, that's how it starts out, that are living together in this warehouse, and they box it out.
Young, ambitious, scared, aggressive, every color of the personality rainbow.
Yeah.
With eyes, if you like that, you just, it automatically, you shorten them up. Some are very feisty, some are withdrawn, but all of them were unified in one thing, that they lived life on the ragged edge.
I mean, one of them had been living in his car, you know? So they're really giving a great opportunity to all these young guys.
What do you think this whole thing is about? Think anyone in here is like born rich, has all the answers?
I don't know. I just want to go hide by a
First of all,
pine tree and listen to the river run.
If you guys weren't up there, you'd probably be in prison.
Now, maybe he'll find a young fighter that will encompass the magic that Rocky Balboa encompassed.
Yes, there's a couple there that are right on the money.
Because it's not like these kids are like, come from like privileged backgrounds. You know, most of them come from pretty poor backgrounds, and some of them come from nice, close families but are very poor, and some come from like rough families that were, you know, a little disjointed. A lot of guys got in trouble when they were young, and boxing was a salvation for them.
I'm gonna go in there, and if my skill and my heart prevail, I get money, my family lives, I don't die, we move on. It's real simple, you know. There isn't a lot of Machiavellian maneuvering.
No one can even tell you anything about boxing apart from negative stuff, like Mike Tyson and biting off ears.
Off screen, out of the ring, they're gentle people, and that's what we want them to see. They're kids. They're really kids. And they have this extraordinary ability to swallow fear and participate in the single most difficult sport in the world, bar none.
The Contender really is about disadvantaged young men fighting for their families against all odds and getting a fair chance. What can... And who's the epitome of that? And we both said it at the same time. Rocky.
I was kind of walking point. I was the guy on the road doing like all the hard work. And these guys would come pulling up and pick up trucks. Hey, you got need a fighter out there? I said, sure. And I'm talking to Sly on the phone. I said, Sly, this is like, what am I doing here? Saw about 2,000 fighters, which about 100 were worth like 2 cents.
One of the greatest moments once we started making Contender was seeing the first time these young professional boxers meet Rocky, an icon. Their faces lit up.
Oh, I didn't know Rocky had a name. Sylvester was his middle name.
Most of these kids, you know, and their families grew up watching Rocky and Rambo and all that good stuff like that. So, yeah, I think they were totally taken by him, and they loved him.
There it is. You know, he's Rocky. I felt the same way. When I came and I met celebrities, and you meet John Wayne, and I know it's John Wayne, but I know it's also the last man to go at the Alamo. I know it's the guy who crossed the Red River. I know, you know what I mean? You know it's him.
And they realized he's such a warm and giving guy. He wrote the story of Rocky because he believes in a disadvantaged guy getting a chance. And he really nurtured them and helped them along their journey. And they told me, by the way, a number of them had the Rocky theme playing over and over in their head when they're hitting the heavy bag, going into a big moment.
He was on a personal basis with the fighters and more on the emotional bent. You know, I mean, I was around some of the times when he did the show, and the kids just loved him, and he loved the kids. He became very protective with the children. children, the guys that kill you.
My father, I talked to him the other night, and I told him I had the cold. He's like, Jeff, just work through it, and you know what I mean? Just try to take in fluids and just, you know, go out there and fight your butt off, you know?
That's it. Keep stretching it, keep moving it.
I think he was thinking the same thing. I think he was thinking, well, you're just nitpicking on little things, but I'm really sick.
No, there's no doubt. When you go up to their room, and I have to take their food away.
Well, he likes to, you know, tell people what to do. So he's kind of like a father type person. So they liked him. Hey, Sly, what's going on? I think you should do this. Wear your hair that way. You know, I mean, he's that type. He's a busybody.
And I say, you know what? You're a bunch of slobs. You're this, you're that. It's unbelievable. Here you are. I eat better than you. I'm not looking, you know, I'm not anyone for a title, but I go in the icebox and I find, you know, sugar pops and half a gallon of ice cream. I said, they're kids. It's like my kids at home. And he said, you know what? We have the right to do whatever we want. We're men, we're this and that. So we literally had a kind of like a full-on battle over this, their right to eat junk.
Guys are really tough guys, but they really went to him for advice. You know, a lot of them got lonely. Some of them were married, had girlfriends. You know, they had, you know, just they'd never been away from home.
So, I mean, I've got to give it to my father. He's always been honest with me, you know what I mean? About what he does, what he's been through, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And it's not always...
Did he tell you to be suspicious?
Sure.
Well, that's important.
Sure.
He really felt for them, and he was always talking about them to me, about how this guy has a family and this guy has a baby on the way.
Well, I could, you know, be their father, really. And I'd have every one of them committed.
The fights are strong stuff. It wasn't like amateur guys. Like, it was the best of West and East. I mean, wonderful.
The fighters both brought their families. They both had young children, and so they brought their wives. One of them brought their mother, and they both had kids that seemed to be under 10 years old. And both sides, the kids were crying, one more than the other. Especially the loser side. The kids were quite hysterical, and the mother took the kids out, and Sly went after the mother and the kids to talk to them both and try to really be there for them. There was no cameras around. Sly was not looking for the camera. Sly did it instinctively to really go after them and to try to calm the kids down and try to bring them some reassurance that their fathers were okay. So I thought that for me was a kind of a poignant moment.
Oh, man, you're the underdog, but you're the overdog, okay? You got what it takes.
And there's a great moment in an episode of The Contender, in fact, episode 1, where he's talking about his movie Over the Top.
His arm wrestling a guy, and right before we're ready to go, we tense up, and he looks me in the eye, and this bird flies out of his mouth, and boom, you were down. I said, the element of surprise.
Of course, he was joking, and these young boxers were like, really? Oh my God, really? And Sly walked away and said, we heard it on camera, and it's in the show, to Shure Leonard. Talk about gullible. Sly is a real prankster.
And this show is about giving them their shot. I didn't know it was going to be that deep, because it's one thing to promote a fight. You're promoting their life.
He did an event one night at his home that I attended and spoke at. And I asked him after it was over, I said, I always thought you were a Republican. Why'd you do this event for our side? And he said, well, I am. I always have been. But he said, I'm concerned about the environment.
We now have to take the responsibility because we're upsetting nature's balance, so we have to upright it. And that, I don't think, should be a political issue. That should just be an automatic, predetermined yes, whatever it takes.
He thought global warming was real. He thought a lot of species were threatened. He thought things had to be done. And I was really impressed because he did it. It was solely on the basis of his personal observation and his convictions about it. After I gave this speech, he came up on the stage and he said, I think everybody in the world has seen that you can take a punch, but I personally think it's time you threw a few.
Well, here's a man that has an extraordinary job. Every day is a fight. What kind of memorabilia can I give him? Something to remember the occasion. So I went down and I found the original Rocky gloves, and I figured, oh, I've been hit in the face about 50 times since these are pretty sentimental. So I put them together and I gave it to him, and I didn't know if he was going to say, oh, okay, thank you very much, well, next. But he actually was very touched by them, and I went, finally. Rocky goes on, right? Rocky goes to the White House in one way or another.
As he said, these gloves were among those I used in the first Rocky movie, and he signed them for me and gave them to me. It's one of my most prized possessions, and I treasure them. And as I said, they're up in my home in New York today in my gym, and I see them every day when I work out.
You know, as you get older, sometimes you lose your drive and your passion. It hasn't happened to me, and it certainly hasn't happened to Sly.
There's a magazine coming out that we're doing called Sly Magazine. I try to instill my outlook on life, like Oprah does with her magazine, like Martha Stewart does with her magazine, like John Kennedy tried to do with his magazine. To make a big shift in one's career takes a lot of riding with angst. Come on, angst, let's take a little ride. And eventually you get off of angst and it's okay.
I mean, it's about what he likes to drink and where he likes to play golf and, you know, what cool guy things that, you know, in his age range, what guys want and what their dreams are.
So the magazine is about not giving up. It's about not going gently into that good night. It's about kicking and screaming as the years roll on. You go, okay, take your best shot, you know what I mean? Whatever nature takes away, we're going to put back. It's all about being aggressive and proactive with your life at all levels, at all ages. It's just going to be a lifestyle magazine that's a little out of the box.
So I think he's positioning himself as an artist to have product again that might be filled with his quirky beauty. And the man is such a fine writer and director, and he's positioned now to begin again. It's like a rebirthing.
He's always got some smart business angle. You know, he's got a lot of smarts when it comes to business.
My biggest regret in life was not being more assertive and being more accountable to the profession by directing more.
And he still has this unending, lust to do something bigger and better, and he's very much involved. And he gets frustrated like all of us, and he drives himself pretty hard.
Physically, probably the toughest person I've ever known in my life. He's, at the same time, probably what people would be surprised to hear, one of the most sensitive people I've ever known in my life. And definitely one of the smartest people I've ever known in my life.
He's very demanding for excellence, extremely passionate. But the best word of all, Sly's raw. And that rawness came through clearly in Rocky and Rambo.
He's like anyone else. He can get moody, he has his times. I don't think it's easy being him.
He's never let me down. He's always been funny. He's always, he's been one of the nicest things to happen to my life.
Heart, body, and soul.
He is a contradiction.
But I want to thank the entire French nation for this incredible honor. And if I died right now, I don't mind, because I've already gone to heaven.
Well, I think he's charismatic. Absolutely. He's a big personality, and you sort of always know where he is in a room. He's kind and thoughtful.
I walked in a restaurant and I saw him sitting there, and he had just a glow. I mean, it's just an energy around him. He was amazing. I just thought, God, this guy actually is funny and interesting, and he actually was listening to what I was saying, and he was a really incredible person the first time I met him.
He's a really generous man, and he's got a really sweet heart, and he's a good friend.
He's one of these people that you can just have the best laugh with and send up mercilessly.
Hey, where'd you get those boots? I said, I found them. Hey, Hey, Arnold.
Stallone.
I mean, when I see him, I see Rocky. It's like, hey, Rock, how's it going?
Hey, your brother.
Yo, Adrian! I don't know.
And if I maybe keep chipping away, eventually one of these darts that you're throwing in the dark is going to hit a target. And, I got very, very fortunate, but that's always been my credo. It's like just a certain portion of the day going after the impossible.
But I love him. He's a good man. That's all I got to say. I mean, he's boring.